Hey folks, good to see you all popping in here. I'm excited about this one. Excited to be doing a talk for Medium Day. If I'm a bit scratched, you'll have to forgive me. It is 6:30 a.m. on a Sunday here in Australia, so I'm still waking up a bit. The only coffee I have left in the house is my seasonal spiced Nespresso, and it is undrinkable. But that's okay. We'll get through it. Okay, so I'm gonna dive in here and I reckon just kind of get started if that sounds all right to everyone. Questions in the panel on the side, but let's do it. So I'm Joan Westenberg. I am a writer on Medium, but I'm tragically online, and I've been writing on the internet for about 2 decades. At one point, before I came out and transitioned, I had the largest Medium blog in the Asia Pacific region. And then I got really drunk one night and deleted it because I make great choices. And now that I'm post-transition and post-sobriety, I'm rebuilding. And I'm having the time of my life doing it because Medium has kind of gone from strength to strength, and it's a platform that I love spending time on. Today, what I'm going to be talking about is 80s indie music, 80s punk rock music, and how there are parallels and ideas that we could take as writers in 2024. So I've dressed for the occasion. Didn't buy this shirt for the talk. This is a shirt that I live in. That's who I am. It's what I love. So the 80s punk rock. I mean, I picked this topic because I can just talk about this for hours. So it's a pretty good topic for 6:30 on a Sunday morning. But in the 80s, punk rock it had its mainstream moment. It had the Sex Pistols breakout. It had bands like that kind of steal some of that mainstream energy. And then there was a bit of a backlash to all of that. And it came from these really low down and dirty, do it their own way, rough and ready punk rock bands from places like Washington, D.C., New York, and California. People who saw punk rock going mainstream and punk rock, quote unquote, selling out, and started bands like Black Flag, like The Germs, like Minor Threat, like Fugazi, and so on. And they were in this world where people had paid a lot of attention to the mainstream punk bands and how much money they could make from them, and they saw hardcore and they just went running because hardcore was not commercial. Indie 80s music, it was not commercial. We're talking about a decade where it was all big hair and echoey drum beats. We're talking about a decade that was flash and glitter and sometimes not a whole lot of substance. It was fun. 80s pop is incredibly fun, but it was the antithesis of what these indie bands were trying to do, which was really just get out there and make music they loved because they had something to say and they were desperate to say it no matter what. And so you had these bands who they were never going to get a look in from these major labels at the time. Um, and they didn't care because they were there to start their own labels, to start their own zines, to literally get in the van and start driving around and playing shows wherever they could. And the goal was never to be a musician. The goal was never to be an artist. The goal was to create art. The goal was to create music. They didn't care about whether they played in a stadium. They were there to play back alleys. They were there to just distribute their music themselves. They would print their own t-shirts. They would, if they if they could find a way to do it, they'd distribute their own music, and they did it their own way. Now, my thesis is that we've kind of lost that indie spirit over the decades. And I think there's an irony to it. More than anything else, we have the tools to go indie, to create indie art, to create indie writing in the context of people like us. We've got the tools to do that. We've got Medium, we've got Paragraph, we've got Wattpad, we've got podcasts that anybody can create, anybody can launch, anybody can distribute. We have tools that would have been undreamt of for people making art, making music, publishing zines, doing it their own way back in the 80s. We've got these unprecedented tools, but I think we've lost some of that DIY ethos because it feels like the goal for us almost is to just use these indie tools until we can get mainstream acceptance, until we can get a book deal, until we can get noticed by a publishing house or a publication and so on. And so I want to take this talk today to just kind of push us to rethink what it means to be indie and rethink that DIY passion and see that there is something wonderful to it on its own. Um, okay, so the current state of writing in 2024, and I've written about this on Medium. Um, I think publishing is fucked. I hope I'm allowed to use language like that at Medium Day. I don't know. I'm Australian. I'm going to do it anyway. But writing is fucked. Um, Publishing makes very little money. Most people who publish a book see no profits from it. And book deals increasingly, and they're not going to people who are, like, 9 times out of 10, they're not going to people who are talented writers who have been working on their craft. They're going to celebrities who have Instagram followings. They're going to quote unquote cancelled people who have hot button issues that they can rant and rave about, or they're literally just another carbon copy in a production line of the same content over and over again. And that's just literary publishing. On the other side of it, you have news media publishing. You have places like the New York Times, the Grey Lady, and that content it's been in decline for a long time because there are perverse incentives behind them. At the end of the day, these publications, they're owned by billionaires who have agendas. They're owned by shareholders who have agendas. They're not owned by people who are just there because they're passionate about creating and distributing news. That's not what it's all about. And so I think when you look at the overall state of writing in 2024, you see a lot of perverse incentives. You see this division between creators on the one side, people like us, we have these stories, these ideas that we want to share. On the other side, you have these companies who they have all the incentives to treat artists and creators and writers like just so much meat for the grinder. And their goal is completely antithetical to everything it means to be a writer, because their goal is to productize what we do in the exact same way that the music industry used to do back in the 80s, to use and abuse and pump and dump writers until they have nothing left. And maybe that's an oversimplification of it. Maybe I'm being kind of a bitch, but I am kind of a bitch, so we're just gonna roll with that. Now, what I want to get to here is this idea that what we're missing from DIY, we're not missing the tools, like we are not missing the tools to be DIY indie writers. We're not missing the know-how, and we're sure as hell not missing the talent, because the writers that I read on Medium are some of the most talented writers that I've ever seen. What we're missing is the anger. And I think if you really look at what these punk bands were doing, these indie bands were doing, if you look at Fugazi and Minor Threat and Black Flag and Bad Brains and all these folks, they were driven partly by their love for the music, partly by their love for community and the ecosystem, but a lot of it was driven by anger. They had a lot to be angry about. They had Ronald Reagan, they had Margaret Thatcher, they had a world that was um, completely disconnected from reality. They had a world that was all glitz and glamour and no substance that they were fighting against. But they also had so much anger against, um, and I hate to use this phrase because I sound like a whole earth catalog reading hippie, but they're angry against the man. They were angry about the record labels who were gatekeeping, and they were angry about people who wanted to say what they couldn't listen to. They had that anger, and it manifested itself in frustration with corporate control and commercialization. And so they rejected that whole thing. They rejected the star making system, and they decided to build their own movement. They used that anger as fuel, starting independent labels, self-producing and self-distributing music. And I guess I just see so many parallels for writers in 2024, the frustration we experience with big publishing houses and their practices. I think there is a way to use that anger to fuel independent publishing initiatives of our own, where we re-examine what it means to be indie, and we say, okay, the goal isn't actually to be a quote unquote Amazon best-selling author and then leverage that to go and get a book deal and then leverage that to get a fucking, I don't know, Netflix show or whatever that looks like. The goal is just to put words out there and find a way for those words to connect with an audience. That's it. That is the goal. And so it's not being indie because we don't have a book deal yet. It's not being indie because one day we're going to be rich and famous writers. It's being indie because that gives us control over our work. It lets us own what we're doing. And it is such a source of power for artists. I think like if we re-examine self-publishing in that way, if we kind of look back to the 80s, look back to what those DIY bands were doing, we can see that there is so much autonomy that can be gained from embracing DIY in a passionate way, not because we really want something else, but because indie is who we are. And challenging the system through writing that we own, that we control, means that we can publish our own books on Medium, Wattpad, publish them anywhere we want. We can tackle taboo subjects and unpopular opinions, and we can do that without the perverse incentives of billionaire platform publication owners controlling the message and controlling what we say. We can expose the flaws in the industry and the injustices, and we can inspire action. We can mobilize other readers. I think there's something wonderful about doing that, and I want to see more of it because that's the publishing world that I genuinely really want to live in. So that's the talk. That's that's what I wanted to get through today. I think what I'm supposed to do now is hand over for questions and talk a bit more in that way, I think. Okay, so if you got any questions for me, drop them into the chat or the Q&A, and I will get to them and try to answer as many as I can. Okay, so CM Torres has written my favorite platforms for indie writers. I'm gonna lead with what's my least favorite. I can't stand Substack. Part of that is just because Substack, they don't actually want to be a platform for writers. They want to be another social network, and they're a social network that doesn't censor Nazis, and I think that's fucked. My favorite platforms, Medium is up there. I'm a big believer in the Medium platform. I interviewed Tony a little while ago for my own blog, um, and I just resonate with what he's trying to build, what he believes in, and what he's doing with this platform. And I think it's fantastic to see. I'm a big fan of the platform Paragraph, which is a Substack competitor. It's very feature rich. If you want to sell subscriptions, you can do that. If you want to integrate like crypto products, like don't jump down my throat. Some people are into that. You can do that. Paragraph is pretty powerful. But then there's stuff like, hey, if you want to publish your own stuff, you can start your own blog and publish on Notion. You can do it on Obsidian and share that stuff publicly as well. Like there's so many different ways to do that. And these are platforms that I love. But yeah, any other questions, keep them coming. You have no idea how bad seasonal spiced espresso coffee actually is, but it's not great. Still drinking it though, aren't I? Okay. So Coral Bruin has asked, you think when medium self-published stories are distributed, the share factor is far-reaching? Well, self-distribution, it does not happen. It's not easy, you know. When I'm talking about these 80s bands and way back when, the distribution part was not easy, but they didn't kind of expect it to be. So, you know, when we post a story online these days, we deep down we all hope it goes viral, right? That's what we want. We want virality. We want that distribution to be easy. We share it once, it goes everywhere. But that's not the mindset that they had back then, because every single record they made, it came out of their own pockets, out of the jobs that they had. You know, in terms of Ian Mackay from Minor Threat, he was working at an ice cream parlor, scooping ice cream to help pay for making each individual record. And then when they had the records, they didn't have a network they could give them to. They would walk around to record stores and give them to record stores and ask them to sell them. They would sell them out the back of their van. They would sell them at the shows. And so I think, yeah, self-publishing on Medium, self-publishing anywhere, it's not going to get you an instant audience because you still have to do that hard fucking work of going out there and finding people who will pay attention to you and doing that really manually sometimes. You know, I spend a whole lot of time actually reaching out to individuals who I respect and like online, individuals who I see have commented a few times on my stuff and talking to them about my work and asking them to share something and asking them to check it out. And I'm not doing that in a spammy way. I'm not doing it at scale. I'm reaching out to individuals and just saying, hey, thank you. I like what you're doing. Here's something I'm up to, and so on. So it's such a manual approach. It's such a one by one approach. But that's like distribution is hard, and the only way to do it is by tackling the hard stuff. Um, okay, some stuff on Q&A. If somebody has asked if I'm interested about spiritual seeking, how would you propose making that angry? The anger that I'm talking about, it's not putting anger in your work. It's using that sense of injustice and anger about the state of writing as fuel for your work. So, if you're interested in writing about spirituality and so on, I'm not saying go out and write an angry blog post about it. I'm saying look at the way that spirituality is used and commodified in the publishing industry pretty frequently with the self-help books and self-help shit and so on like that. Look at that and then use what you see as being the shortcomings and the injustices of publishing as the inspiration to put your own work out there. Um, okay, so has my writing ever brought me anything I have ever wanted? Why do I write? What is my driving emotion? Why do I write? When I was growing up, when I was a kid, I had a really, really bad speech therapy problem. I couldn't actually have a conversation with anyone. I couldn't talk like this, certainly. I had a bad lisp. I was going through speech therapy and all that kind of stuff. But what I could do is I could write. And if I had something that I wanted to say, wanted to get out there, I could just write it down. I could write it down in post-it notes in diaries and books and chapbooks and all this and stacks of paper. I could write because that way I could be understood and I could show people what I actually wanted to say. Um, Years of therapy, years of work later, I can have these conversations like this. I can get up and talk and it's no problem. But I think for me, writing something down, it's now a part of the DNA of who I am and how I share. Um, Okay, what else do I have here? Um, Suzanne has asked, do I know anyone blending, harmonizing local and hard print with online? So this is very interesting to me, local. Um, we've really lost something here in the way that we have rejected local communities and local ecosystems. In that I think a lot of people, they want to get online fame, and they do that at the expense of the local communities that used to be the starting point for writers and creators. So I don't know anyone who's really blending that kind of stuff, but I think there's something wonderful about doing it, And like one of the things that I really want to work on doing in the next few months is a bar around the corner from me that often feature some indie bands and so on. I want to start organizing a small event series, just getting some writers to come in and talk and spend some time together in person if they can. I think there's something really wonderful about trying to foster a community of writers in your local area, just in the people around you. Uh, what else do I have here? I'm not sure how I'm doing for time, but okay. When did I start making an income as an indie writer? Yeah, so that really depends on what you mean by an income. I'm gonna be really honest with you. I'm not a wealthy writer. That's not what I am. I used to work in tech, and I realized that, look, background. I studied journalism. I was a journalist for a while. Eventually, I drifted into tech because a lot of the journalism jobs just went away. And then I became horribly disillusioned with just how fucked up everything is in tech. And last year, I walked away from that, and I've been focusing on writing ever since. And I'm burning through my savings to do that because I have some important stuff that I want to say. And eventually I will refocus and I will get back to probably just freelancing as a journalist again, freelancing as a writer again, and that will be my income source. But for now, considering the state of the world, the US election, the anti-trans stuff that's going on, the corporate stuff that's going on, control from I I want to take this moment in time to just write, and I'm very privileged that I have the savings to do that. And when they run out, I'll go back to freelancing. So yeah, look, if you want one of those writers who's going to get up and say, hey, look, here's how to make six-figure income as a writer, that's not me. I'm not doing that. I probably never will do that. What's my take on AI? The most useful thing that I've used AI for in the past little while is that I had a recipe for a quiche Lorraine that I wanted to make, and the recipe was designed for a 23 centimeter pie tin, and I only had a 30 centimeter pie tin, and I put all that into ChatGPT, and it gave me the right recipe for the pie tin size. Um, and that's not my way of saying that AI is shit or anything like that. I have opinions on AI. There's some things it's good for, there's some things that it's not good for, but I think use it as a tool to solve individual problems that you have instead of trying to use it as a be all and end all to solve all your creative problems and that kind of thing. Um, so yeah, I had an issue that I wanted to solve. My quiche recipe wasn't right, and AI could help me solve that. Um, and so I think, yeah, just try to approach AI from an individual problem perspective. Don't get too caught up in the macro of it because it's not your. I don't think you can actually become the crusader who saves the world from AI. I think you have to be a little bit pragmatic about it. Use it where you can and where you want to. Don't expect it to solve the world for you. Incidentally, the quiche turned out pretty good. I didn't do enough of the blind bake, so the base wasn't quite as baked as I wanted it to be, but the flakiness was great, so I was happy with that. What else is there? Anything else? I'm sure I've missed a bunch of things here. If I have missed stuff and you want to ask it, my email is joan@joanwestenberg.com, and you can email me and I'll answer every email. But yeah, this has been really fun. Just trying to make sure that I don't miss any questions here. Sorry, Golden Johnson says question was missed above. I'm going to scroll back up. Okay. Yeah, no, I think I've answered that one now. Okay, so somebody's asked, they want to make their own living from their words. Is this possible on indie platforms? I don't know. That's my honest answer. A lot of the people who are making a living from their writing, quote unquote, they're actually just selling courses to other writers about how to make a living as a writer, and that's pretty messed up. Yes, you can make a living. There are people who do that. Very often they go niche. I think that's often the answer to it. Whether that's in romance or genre fiction or really specific topics, and they build that direct relationship with their audience. The 1,000 true fans theory, and it's not easy. Um, it's really hard to do that. Um, to answer another question that's just popped up here, have I built a revenue stream? Look, I don't think of it as a revenue stream. I think because if I go down that path, I'm going to get into that grind set kind of way of thinking about my writing, and I don't want to do that. Um, how do I make money from my writing? Well, there's a few ways that I do that. I sell books on Gumroad. I have a Patreon. I am a part of the Medium paid program where I publish stories and Medium pays if they do well on the platform. That's kind of cool. I do freelance indie journalism as well. Um, yeah, so like I said, I don't like calling them revenue streams, but I have ways that I try to make money from my writing. And again, not a wealthy writer here. That's not me, but I'm doing the best I can. And I think, okay, do I collect zines myself? So I want to answer this question. Any favorite zine makers or indie publishers? I do collect zines, yeah. I'm not sure how. relevant they're going to be for folks here, but it's mostly like straight edge hardcore zines and stuff like that. And you get them at shows, you get them at local hardcore shows, you get them at just like punk gigs and stuff like that. But yeah, I collect chapbooks and poetry chapbooks and zines from indie comic book writers and so on. And a lot of these you get them from bookstores. Local bookstores will sell zines, will feature zines, will have zines at the counter and so on, which is kind of a cool way of finding that and getting that. Can I talk about Notion for publishing? Yeah, so Notion for publishing, you can build a book, not a book. I mean, yeah, I guess you probably could. You can build a blog on Notion. Notion has publishing features. We can literally publish pages, publish databases, and then just keep updating stuff there. You can integrate a domain. I think, don't quote me on this, but I think it's $10 a month to integrate your own domain for a specific database on Notion to publish on. So there's definitely some tools there that Notion have. If you really want to, you can make Notion your one-stop shop for your publishing. I personally don't because I take a modular approach to the tools that I use because I never want to put all my eggs in one basket or all my faith in one tech platform. So, um, I write in Obsidian. I keep my tasks in Todoist. I use a different service to manage my emails. Um, yeah, I don't like being all in on one platform, but that's just me. Yeah, love Obsidian. Great tool. I've been through that thing where you put all your stuff into a single tool, um, Evernote, and then the tool gets steadily worse over time, more and more expensive. They keep raising the price because they think you're locked in, and then you're kind of a little bit fucked by it. So now what I really like about Obsidian is that it's all just markdown files that you have in a folder on your computer. So you control your notes and your writing and the stuff that you have, and you get to own it and manage it, and that's a really cool thing. Um, okay, I think we are coming up on time here, which as much as I would love to stay and talk forever. One more question. What did I do in tech? Um, a bunch of different things. I taught myself to code when I was 13 by modding Wolfenstein 3D. And so that meant that I have a background in dev and a background as a journalist. And so combining those things, I was able to help companies translate complicated tech products in a way that other folks could understand. So sometimes that was managing comms. I've been a CMO before. Um, I'll probably be a CMO again at some point when all my money runs out and I need to buy coffee that's not seasonal spice and espresso. But yeah, Mary, I'm sorry for ignoring you. Sorry, I was just trying to get to the stuff that had a specific question to answer. Yes, we do need to come up with a new definition for indie, but I think that that new definition is probably just re-embracing the old definition of what is indie? It's independent. Like there's power in being independent. Who like we should be more independent. Like if you're in a relationship, you should be able to go out and have dinner by yourself. That's independence. See your friends without your partner. That's independence, and that should kind of work for everything. Like independence is not a bad thing. Being dependent on other people is not necessarily a bad thing, but it shouldn't be the default. My accent, I'm from Australia. Australia, mate. Thanks, everyone. Thank you very much for joining me today. It has been cool. I appreciate it. Thank you. Um, Beth, sorry, your question. Do you recommend Nicholas Cole's concept of writing content everywhere? I don't know enough about that to answer it. I'll look up Nicholas Cole and I'll have a look into it. And if you drop me an email, I'll try to answer that and see where I kind of land on that. Happy to do that, but yeah, I don't know enough about that to answer it. Somebody said, what was it? Yeah. Okay. Oh, so this is the last question. Should I publish books all at once or spread them out over time? I think spread them out over time is probably the right answer. I don't know about anyone else, but as a reader, I get really overwhelmed if there's too much stuff all at once. It's the Star Wars problem, just too much content coming out all at once, and I just get lost a little bit. That might not be the right answer for everyone, but it's the right answer um, for me because yeah, I can get really overwhelmed if there's too much stuff for me to read, and I can get a little bit lost, and that's um, yeah, so look, that might not be the right answer for everyone. It is the right answer for me. Um, right, I think that's all I've got time for today. Thank you very much. Thanks for joining me today, and I hope you enjoyed it. Check out joanwestenberg.com if you've got any questions and so on. Email me, joan@joanwestenberg.com, and I promise I will answer you. Probably not today, because after I finish this, I'm going to take the dog for a walk and I'm going to go and eat some bacon. But thank you all.